ready? Okay. We are towards the end of the conference. We kept the best for the end. So you will see today, well, as you might know, I stopped doing slides manually 2 years ago. I hope to show you the state of the art in AI slides. This is Claude. And also I would like to invite on stage Abby from the US. Please come and wire yourself with that mic. And she will present with me. And Abby is from a media company in the US, and she's an AI magician. So she prepared this very complex presentation. I don't know, you can check the details, you can see a lot of details. The presentation was so complex that I don't know, because of the complexity of my early dementia, but I need a script to understand exactly what I have to do. So let's start. If you're ready. Yeah? Let's go. Can you hear me? Just a second. This is not a story about the project results. No, this is something new. And I think it's somehow connected with something that Aida presented in the previous session, Lisa presented just now. There is a new way of measuring impact. I mean, there is another session on impact that is in another room, but we are talking about impact more in this session, actually. So things are changing, and we will see now. We can be a little bit bolder because this is a new idea, so we will show a way to measure impact that might be intangible. Abby.
Imagine that after a field visit, participants leave a voice memo. One of them says this: "The creek looks different today. The water seems sicker." In most systems, this is what happens next. Participant 42, one observation submitted, check. We think this sentence is the most important thing in the entire project, and we're going to show you how.
Well, wait a moment. So this sentence is the most important thing in the entire project. I mean, we are used to measure a process with KPIs. What are the KPIs here? We are used to 500 participant hours, 87% satisfaction, 300 observations. These are the metrics that we have to use when we report back to the European Commission when we want to get the new grant. What happens here?
They have a fatal flaw.
Yes, they have a fatal flaw. And the fatal flaw is that all these metrics will stop exactly when the project ends. So when the project ends, the coordinator moves on, the platform goes darker, the project finishes. But even after the project ends, somebody will go back to the creek.
Say that again?
They will go back to the creek and they will bring their daughter too. But we cannot measure it because the project is finished. That participation is invisible for us. But we have to consider that we have this so-called funding cliff. Funding cliff is when there is no more funding, no more obligation, the Commission will not be able to check what we are doing. So what do we do about it?
Coordinators know this problem. One told us, "We count the bird boxes, but we have no idea if Gene and Roxwell Road actually feels connected to nature. To assume the placement of a box creates a connection, that sort of assumption is spurious." But what if we're framing it wrong? What if we do not need to go back after the funding ends because the transformation is already announcing itself during the project, in the words people use? Here's what we are proposing. And we want to be precise about this. It is a hypothesis, supported by converging research from psycholinguistics, place attachment theory, and self-determination theory. Reconnection with place announces itself in language before it manifests in behavior. If that is true, then language is not just a reflection of the change. It is an early observable indicator of it. And that changes everything about when and how we measure.
Yeah, and this is not speculation. So there is a researcher called Pennebaker. Can we go back to that? Pennebaker. This is not research about how to make penne. As an Italian, I would be interested in that. No, it's not that. And the research of Pennebaker. Go back to the second. I'm amazed. In Italy, we wouldn't survive with this. So the research of Pennebaker is about the fact that unexpectedly function words are like pronouns, like prepositions, can say more about our psychological state than content words. So, for example, when a participant transitions from the creek to my creek, this is not a stylistic choice. This is a change of identity. So the participants become more identified with the environment, and there is this adoption of the place. So this is measurable. This is a linguistic change that is measurable.
And Bruner's work on narrative identity tells us why this matters. We construct our sense of self through the stories we tell. When a participant's story about a place changes, when the creek becomes something that can seem sicker, something worth worrying about, something they're paying attention to over time, their identity is changing with it.
Well, then there is an emerging connection that can become visible. And we would like to show you a few examples of this. So the first example is when we have a transition from the water looked dirty to I noticed black sands near the bank. So in this case, you can see that the first things that changes is the specificity, active voice, more details, So this is not a person that is just collecting an observation. It's a person that is noticing a place. And we call these kind of signals surface signals. Okay?
In another example, the creek becomes my stretch of the creek. Possessive shifts like this often occur outside conscious control. Pennebaker's research shows they are widely used in psycholinguistics as indicators of psychological alignment and identity. And here's what most projects miss. Rooted signals often do not look like enthusiasm. They look like worry, like grief. The creek where my grandfather fished before the factory came, that sentence contains loss. And loss is often what predicts sustained engagement, because you protect what you have allowed yourself to love.
And a last example is when we have an evolution from the nitrate levels are high to not only the nitrate levels are high, but also we should check upstream. So look what changed here. So here we have a desire for future action. You have a first person plural. You have this modal shooter that is an advocacy model. So that's something that we call branching signals, and it is when people stop just observing what is, but they are advocating for what it should be, what comes next. And also the plural. So branching is because we go from one person to a community, maybe small, maybe big, but we are branching signals here. So 3 sentences, you see, the ones that perceive. Everyone is a linguistic shift that is measurable.
And here's what this means for everyone in the room. Coordinators have two kinds of evidence: qualitative stories that capture what matters and quantitative data that funders trust. But neither one alone tells you whether someone's relationship with a place actually changed. Our framework listens for signals of that change while the project is still running. Traditional evaluation requires surveys or follow-up studies after the project ends. A 60-second voice memo captures relational signals during a project.
Why 60 seconds?
I don't know, it's a random number. What do you prefer, 42?
Well, maybe not 42, otherwise people will start talking about the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy instead of their observation. So let's keep here 60 seconds.
All right. The 60-second voice memo is built around three simple questions. What did you notice today? Did this connect to anything you've been thinking about? And have you told anyone about this? Each one is listening for a different signal.
Okay, so this is the most important slide, so careful attention. So these are the details about the methodology that we are proposing. So what we propose is that, so we have two things. So we are talking about shifting language, okay? And then we are talking about identity. Identity means the relation of the participant with their environment, with the nature, the emotional connector to nature sometimes. So we want to measure the language at the beginning and in the middle of the project. This is important, in the middle of the project. We are completely in charge at the middle of the project. And then we want to measure the identity, the relation between the participant and the environment, or whatever they are doing, at the beginning and at the end of the project. And then we want to understand if the mid-project language change reflects the identity change at the end of the project. So we are completely in control. This happens in the project. So we are not talking about evaluation after the end of the project. So if we can demonstrate that, we can predict longer-term actions, longer-term changes within the project thanks to language. But the question is scale. So we're talking about people changing their languages. So a coordinator can notice this language shift in some person. But when we have hundreds of participants, thousands of participants, no one can listen. So she, you died. No. Well, no one can listen to hundreds of hours of recordings, to hundreds of pages of transcriptions. That's impossible. But now we have AI, the new gen AI. This is the change. So the scaling factor can be solved now for the first time thanks to this heavy processing that can be lifted by AI.
This panel asks how we measure the intangible, how we know if our projects produce durable change, how individual learning becomes collective action. Our answer: listen to the language. The possessive shifts, the agency modal, the sensory detail, these are not just anecdotes. They are early observable indicators, measurable during the project, and they may predict what persists after we leave. With AI, we can begin to hear those signals while the project is still underway.
So the word shift, the language shift happens before the change is visible.
And now we have the tools to hear them.
We are building this in our new projects, and we will be able soon to give you numbers about how it might be a complete failure, but we are positive. So we will build it in our new project. We invite you to build it in your new projects, and then in the next ECSA conference, I hope that we can discuss about what we find. Thank you.